The skills of a good architect encapsulate a variety of different sort of experiences. It's not purely focused on design, and that's quite an important thing to consider. As someone who's considering a path through architecture as an educational course and then on towards a professional career, while one has to have an interest in design and while one has to be very skilled in the design process, there are also other things that make a good architect, requirements. The ability to listen to people, to be a people person generally, and to be able to lead and discuss ideas eloquently. The ability to be sort of business-minded as well, rather than just being purely artistic. To have the ability to keep a level head. So there's a balance between professionalism and artistry, and that's quite a difficult thing to balance. There is being an artist and sort of getting your head down and brainstorming and getting sort of inspiration about what you're producing, and producing scribbles and sketches and building models, and everyone goes through that process at some point in the design of a project.
One of the key talents is the passion to want to communicate with other people, and that sounds like a very broad statement, but communication isn't all about talking to people. It's about being able to explain your ideas, and sometimes for all of us, explaining your ideas is really quite a challenge. You can do it by drawing, you can do it by making models, you can do it by, yes, just talking to people, but the ability to draw and to communicate one-to-one in front of people as you're developing ideas is not only incredibly rewarding, it gives the opportunity to engage the people you're talking to in the design process, so they almost feel it's theirs, it belongs to them as well, and that's a key element in actually developing ideas together with a client. And that does demand a level of artistic ability, it demands a level of understanding, and more than ever these days, of course, it demands a level of real understanding about the environment and the environmental issues that obviously surround and encase all the projects that we look at.
Every company goes about recruitment in a different way. Sometimes internally, sometimes externally, via an agency, across a range of different advertising media, at specific times of the year, or simply when needs must. So how do the companies we've interviewed go about searching for their staff?
Recruitment happens on a number of different levels. Certainly agencies feature in there and have done now for some time, but certainly our website is seen as a key tool for our recruitment.
When we recruit graduates in architecture into TP Bennett, we've got quite a focused methodology for doing so. One way is through receiving CVs and portfolios through the post. That tends to happen at quite regularly at an early stage. We'll get about 100 applications through at least a year, from sort of February through to June time, as graduates near the end of their degree or their diploma. What we look for in that limited amount of information is a sort of a concise explanation of yourself, your own interests, and examples of the way you design. It's a very difficult thing to get across, of course, because talking about the nature of an architect and the roles an architect has to encapsulate, it's not just about the ability to draw beautiful drawings, it's about the ability to talk about your drawings, to present them in a certain way, and to be able to explain yourself and your own interests.
I think historically we've been relatively traditional in that we've expected people to come to us. I think that we recognise now that we need to be a little bit more proactive there. So we're forming relationships with all the local colleges and universities in the architectural sector and associated disciplines to make sure that we are trying to get to the best students and let them know what we have to offer them. So I think we're trying to develop that. The architectural education process naturally has internships. It basically you need to have professional and on-the-job training, so that's part of the process, and we take on a lot of graduates and graduates after their postgraduate training as well every year, and we have a structured programme to make sure that they can reach their professional qualifications as quickly as possible in the required time.
I think in terms of making an application and doing a CV, images on the CV always help to grab attention. So put examples of your work along with the CV, along down the side or something, or make an interesting little booklet, something that shows your design skills, from the outset. It shows that you're a bit different and you're thinking outside the box.
In certain careers, we know what kind of thing we're going to be doing from the outset. If you're a street sweeper, you know you're going to have to get pretty familiar with a brush. If you're an accountant, you'll have to be prepared for Excel to become a big part of your life. And if you're a fisherman, expect to get wet. With an overabundance of graduate job seekers across the board and a lack of vacancies to accommodate them all, it's increasingly important to make sure that you stand out from the thousands of applicants vying for your place. One of the best ways to do this is by getting some kind of relevant work experience in the field that you wish to work in. So what do our professionals have to say about it?
I think one of the most important things for young people trying to find out about a creative profession and perhaps how they could be involved in it is to get some work experience, really, long before the time that perhaps you go to university and make those choices. And we take young people from the age of 15 or 16 years old to come into the office to see what we do. We have links with many of the schools so that they can get a feel for what the work is like, and you know, for some people that's very encouraging. For some of the art students, for some of the creative students, it's great to be able to see what happens on a daily basis and see people actually producing things which they would really relate to as drawings and art and so on. And of course, with the advent of computer-aided design for many years now, the creative sort of possibilities are even broader than they ever were before. But there's no substitute for the arc of a pencil in your hand, because that's where the vision always starts.
I think work experience while at school would help from the point of view that you just get to experience the office environment and the office atmosphere. But in terms of work later on, I don't think that would have any effect on whether or not it would help you get a job after your degree or anything. I think it literally just is good to get that insight though, because often when you finish university, it can seem very different in real life as the life at university, I suppose.
I would say work experience isn't really that important. I would say if there's any opportunity to go and visit an architect's office, be it for a day or even a week, that's a good thing to do, because an architect's profession is not one you really come across in a day-to-day role of life. So what is it? What do they do? A lot of people don't know. So, you know, it might be a bit of a shock once you've been to college, done a few years, and then you're suddenly in office, and it's all very different. It's very different for me. It was very different, but very different in a good way. So it was great. But I think that's quite a good thing to do. The
benefit of work experience is absolutely invaluable at any age, and I would advise anybody to go and get as much experience as they can. But I would also encourage people thinking of going into architecture to get experience on building sites, to see it from the eyes of the tradesmen who will ultimately be delivering the building that you've designed is just as valuable as working in an architectural practice. To get a varied work experience is extremely valuable.
American politician and diplomat Adlai Stevenson once said, "We should be careful and discriminating in all the advice we give. We should be especially careful in giving advice that we would not think of following ourselves." Far be it from us to disagree with old Addy, we've asked our architects for some pearls of wisdom that they've cashed in themselves.
I think the advice I'd give to graduates is be confident in what you do. Make sure that architecture is what you're thinking of doing. I would say it's important to be able to draw to a certain base level, because it's so important during meetings and day-to-day sort of office work to be able to draw your ideas down when you're maybe not able to communicate them quite the way you'd like to. I'd also say there's a steep learning curve in architecture, so even if you don't feel confident in first year, by the time you've gone through first, second year, you've developed your ideas, you've taken on board what your tutors have said to you, you're far more confident when it comes to finding a job in the workplace once you've graduated.